The drama that is James freaking Harden and the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets, guys. All right, I'll start over.
That was so bad.
The drama that is James freaking Harden and the Brooklyn Nets. Folks, the BenchMop Scrubs lives for that tea. We live for that drama, and we will bring you all the juicy details of the craziness that has ensued the past 24 hours. Welcome to an emergency press release podcast of this 4-team mega deal. We got the entire lineup of Scrubs back in action today. Shout out to Ibrahim. We missed your presence dearly. So with that, we'll start with you, buddy. What do you make of that Harden trade to the Nets?
Well, first off, I want to say I was right. I don't think the Rockets are going to make the playoffs, and this just further cements my preseason predictions. In addition to that, I don't know what Harden's going to do for the Nets because Kyrie's not even showing up. I've never seen anything like this before. This is actually, I take that back. Remember when Derrick Rose was on the Knicks? And he just went MIA for like 2 weeks and they didn't know where he was. And he showed back up and he's like, oh, now I'm ready to play. I mean, this is the only thing I could think of in comparison to Kyrie. He's just saying it's personal issues and he just left. But that being said, if Kyrie doesn't show up, I think Harden and Durant are an amazing combo. That 1-2 punch is amazing. They played together in OKC. And to be honest, when they got rid of Harden, I always thought they should have gotten rid of Westbrook and kept Harden and Durant together. So I'm actually really excited to see them play together. I think Harden, for the first time in the last 5 years, is actually going to defer to somebody else. And Durant is a type of superstar where he doesn't need a lot of touches. He's kind of like Klay Thompson, where he just can play off the ball, just, get a pass, go off the screen, hit a three. And he's become a much better passer this year. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but he's facilitating more. And I think he's the perfect person to put alongside Harden. And I think it's going to be exciting basketball. It's just when Kyrie comes back, there's just not going to be enough to go around. There's 3 superstars that each can drop 30 points any given day. And there's just one basketball. So I don't know how Steve Nash is going to coach this team, especially when Steve Nash can't even get Kyrie to show up right now. I mean, that's what I got. What do you guys got?
Yeah, we'll kick it off to Yusuf. What do you think, buddy?
Well, all I want to say is Houston, rejoice. Houston, rejoice. You got James Harden out of that organization. I said it from episode 1 on the podcast that he just didn't seem to buy into the season this year, missing training camp, lack of chemistry. It showed. He came out of shape. They're 3-6, and it's good riddance for the Houston Rockets getting Oladipo, getting 3 Brooklyn Nets first rounders, and overall with John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, Christian Wood, I think they're going to be honestly better off without Harden than they were with him. And I think the 3-6 start for the Rockets was largely attributed to James Harden, because if you look at the stats, he was shooting the ball about 37%, for the entire team. And he wasn't doing that great. I'm happy for the Houston Rockets. The Nets just got another drama queen onto their team. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden. These are guys who have low tolerance for patience. As soon as something doesn't go well for them, they want to book it. And now it's just going to be interesting to see what the Brooklyn Nets can do with these 3 guys. And, Ibrahim alluded to the fact that he's excited to see James Harden and Kevin Durant play together. On the Thunder, James Harden came off the bench. He was 6th man. And then, seeing whether or not Kyrie Irving even does come back is going to be the big question mark over there. I think the Brooklyn Nets have set them back. They shot themselves in the foot. They've lost a bunch of first rounders. I don't know what Steve Nash is going to do over there, but I'm just happy for the Houston Rockets.
Hey, Yusuf, I got to ask you a question. I don't know if the podcast listeners actually follow you on Instagram, but Yusuf actually got special COVID exemption to go to a Rockets game. I want to say, 2 weeks ago?
Yes, sir.
So when you watched them live, how did he play that game? Because the one thing I've noticed about Harden is the first 2 or 3 games of the season, he absolutely destroyed. I think that first game, he had 40 plus and 17 assists. And then the last 2 or 3 games, like I think last game he had 16 points. So I would love to hear your perspective because you were actually in the stands and sent me a video of Harden in that layup line. Literally the clip that we've seen on Instagram where, he may have hit the buffet a little too hard before that game.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I was really lucky to be able to go to the Houston Rockets game, see them live, especially with this pandemic. I will say they socially distanced really well. There were barely any fans in the stands. But what I saw from James Harden, and I kept my eyes on him, sometimes when you're watching it on the TV broadcast, you don't see their demeanor in the huddle and everything like that. I saw a guy who was indifferent about the situation, honestly, who didn't show that emotion that you typically would show when you want to win a basketball game. I remember distinctly because the game I went to, they played the Dallas Mavericks.
Hey!
And your guy Luka. The difference in Luka and James Harden in that game was just insane. Luka had a triple-double, 36 points. I think he had 16 rebounds and 11 assists. And James Harden that game, I've never been a fan of his game, honestly, because his dribble, shoot. He shot 5 for 19, didn't really do anything on the defensive side. And I think that's a lot of what the Brooklyn Nets can expect this year, especially not showing up for training camp, not having those reps that you normally would have in a regular season. And then, like you said, man, Kevin Durant, James Harden are going to have to share the ball, and we'll see how that turns out.
Yusuf, I saw Daniel shaking his head. Do you think, Daniel, Houston, we have a problem, or this is a good thing for Houston?
I mean, I agree with you, so I think it's a good thing that they got rid of him because it was getting worse day by day, right? He wasn't respecting his teammates. He was calling them out, especially the last game. He said, Rockets were just not good enough. But I agree with Yusuf in the sense that there's the 3 Musketeers. Now there's going to be a trio of divas. We got Kevin Durant with the burner account. We got Kyrie Irving missing games for unnecessary reasons, and then you got James Harden, who, if you guys remember, when he got to the Houston Rockets, he said he wanted to bring Howard in, and they brought him in, and then he said, I don't want to play with them. Then he said, bring Chris Paul in. They brought Chris Paul. He said, I don't want to play with them. Then he said, bring Westbrook. They played for a year. Then he said, I don't want to play with them. Now he wanted to go to the Nets. He's there. Let's see what happens. I agree. It's going to be a talented team, right? With Irving, with Durant, with Harden. It's a major offensive attack that's going to be coming. But it's not all about offense, and it's not all about talent. Do you guys remember the 2004 Lakers with Kobe, Shaq,
that team was stacked.
Malone, and Payton? And guess what happened? They met a team with chemistry, and they lost. And I believe this is what's going to happen with these Nets. They're going to do well. They're going to blow teams out. But when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to grind, I don't see this team winning it all. And I think a lot of people are expecting them to win it all. We got a couple of friends that really think they're going to win it all this year. But I think Yusuf and I at least disagree about that. So it's not all about offense. It's about defense as well. And the one thing that the Nets can do is they can score, but the one thing they can't do is they can't defend, and they lost their best defensive player with Jared Allen. So and look at it now, like who do they have on their team, right? They got a great starting 5. They got Irving, they got Harden, they got Joe Harris, Durant, and Jordan. But on the bench, who do you have? Can you guys name a player? Like there's no one on that bench, and it's not like Steve Nash, yes. He's gonna when he's if he's coming up,
Stoudemire there too.
He's gonna be the first coach player in NBA history.
Bill Russell was a coach player back in
That's true.
during his last championship.
Well, one thing I'd like to bring up, guys, is the quote that James Harden said yesterday, actually, that led to that situation. Was he said, I quote, I love this city. I have literally done everything that I can do. This situation is crazy. It's something that I don't think can be fixed. We're not even close. And he's referring to the talent on the team. Honestly, on that team, referring to the Lakers, I mean, you can tell the difference in these last two games. We're just not good enough. Chemistry, talent wise, just everything. And it was clear the last two games. So, I mean, obviously, I was surprised how quickly the Rockets ownership and then the management pulled off this trade. And that was probably the best thing because, obviously, it wasn't a surprise that he didn't want to be there. But in these scenarios, the longer you wait, the less value you get back. And I think that was smart for the Rockets to make it known that, we know you want to leave and we're just going to let you go, but we're trying to get some assets back. Because if they had waited 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, because this is a very fluid situation, even a week, they barely would have gotten anything back because the entire league knows. And then James Harden had all the leverage and just, NBA is very unique, different from the NFL and hockey and soccer and all that. It's a superstar driven league. So at the end of the day, can you blame James Harden for wanting out of the situation in Houston? Who knows? Maybe. And do you truly believe that he gave it his all? I truly think he did. For the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years that he was there, he gave it his all. Him and Durant that are teaming up, I think you guys are really maybe overrating the aspect of their drama. There's drama on every team that is riddled with superstars. That's always going to be there. Talent, just from a talent standpoint, with Harden, with Durant, and with Kyrie, I think this is the most talented big three in NBA history. I don't think there's any. You can go back to the one with the Miami Heat and LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. This is more talented than that. Yes, they were friends, and it was kind of a different scenario. But I think from a talent perspective, these guys are ridiculously talented if they can put it together, and if someone can find where the hell Kyrie Irving is, and if he wants to play at some point, this team can do something special. Because as Daniel was alluding to, the bench. What bench players could you name from the Miami Heat when they first signed all those the 3 superstars? We couldn't name one. We couldn't.
Mike
honestly.
Miller.
Speak for yourself.
I'm saying at the time.
Mario Chalmers.
Mario Chalmers was a starter, FYI.
Yeah, he was a
Oh,
starter.
he was? Never mind.
Starter.
So actually, can
James
I
Jones.
comment on that? Oh, yo, he did ride the bench.
Udonis Haslam.
Yeah.
Let's go. No,
So-
Haslam was a starter.
One thing though,
For a little bit, but then
What
he
do you
came
guys-
off the bench.
What do you guys think in
So-
terms of, with or without Kyrie? How do you think the just knowing the friendship and relationship of KD and Harden, how do you think they will play out together, knowing their styles of play and knowing KD has taken a back seat, playing off ball with Golden State? How do you think they will mesh together moving forward?
So I could take a first stab at that, not to cut off anyone else. But from my perspective, I want to look at this historically, right? It's not just a talent thing in the NBA. It's also a mindset thing, right? So from my perspective, if you look at the last couple, big threes or teams that have, come together in a relatively short amount of time, the ones that did not have great chemistry did not win it all their first year, right? We have exceptions out there like KD. When he went to the Warriors, he fit right in because he doesn't really need the ball, and Steph and Curry can play off ball. And Draymond Green doesn't really need the ball, and whoever they were playing at center, I forget who it was, but that person was just playing defense. And so they had the greatest offense and a great chemistry for most of their run together. If you look at AD and LeBron, when AD came over, it was all about winning championships. But then if you look at, going back farther to that Miami Heat team that you're talking about, now I wouldn't flat out say that the Nets have more talent than the Heat. I have to sit down and think about it. But, I think the difference maker between them is, what is the difference between Chris Bosh and Kyrie? Because, LeBron versus KD, I feel like that's a pretty close matchup. Dwayne Wade in his prime, to me, is the third best shooting guard of all time. And even though they had all that talent, they got to the finals and they were beat by a team that had better chemistry, better coaching, and had the right mindset. And LeBron and Dwayne actually talk a lot about how important that loss was for LeBron James, because when he left that year, he came back even more focused. And he came back and won 2 more clips in Miami, won a chip in Cleveland, and then won a chip in LA. And so when I look at this Nets team, with Kyrie not showing up, with James Harden not being in shape, and for those of us that have played basketball, even record like on the side and in the Y and things like that, we know how much wear and tear you put on your body when you're not in good shape. You can easily pull a hamstring. You're going to be out for a couple weeks. You never really get right until you get those pounds off. And I think with Kyrie just not being there mentally and really focused, and Harden kind of sabotaging his way out of the Rockets, I think the Nets are going to they're going to make some noise in the playoffs. But I think a team that's more disciplined, more focused is going to exploit them, right? In the playoffs, when the game slows down, I could see a team easily, win a couple possessions here and there. And the next thing they won the chip. I was listening to a podcast literally this morning. Joakim Noah was speaking about the Bulls and when they got beat by the Heat 4-1 in the conference finals. And he mentioned something that, triggered a memory to me. He said if you were to take all of those scores in those 5 games and add them up, the score would have been tied, Miami versus Bulls. And that's how close it was. But the record itself, 4-1, doesn't really show that. And that's because at that point, LeBron and Dwayne Wade were focused and they really were chasing that title. And I think that may be something that happens. It'll be a lot of close games, but the team that takes it seriously is going to win the close ones and win the series.
How dare you listen to other podcasts that aren't our own? How dare you?
Yo, key, man.
No, I don't care. This is we're a bench. You know what? I'm gonna mute Ibrahim for the rest of this time.
I mean, I can talk about the best trio. I know we mentioned LeBron, Wade, and obviously Bosh. In terms of talent, I mean, it's a close comparison, right? But the one trio that we didn't bring up is Steph, Clay, and Durant. I think they had the best chemistry and overall talent. So, I mean, it's not talent alone. I think that makes up the best trio. It's who's won the most championships, and it's also who played well the most together, right? You had Durant, Steph, and Clay. They moved well together. They passed the ball together and played well together. So in my books, I mean, I could say they are probably better. But talent-wise, I think it would be LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, right? I mean, like you said, Ibrahim, LeBron and Durant, LeBron wins. Wade and Harden, Wade wins. And then between Irving and Bosh, I think Irving has the edge, but I mean overall, then I would say the Heat team had a better talented trio overall. But coming back to the Nets, right? This team with all the drama and a rookie head coach with all that ego, I think it's gonna get messy, right? It's gonna be so much going on, and going back to if the Nets are gonna be able to win this year. I don't think they're gonna be able to win because there's so many factors in play, right? I mean, COVID is in play, right? Do you guys see how many games are being canceled or postponed? How many practices are being canceled? How many players aren't going to be playing these games? So with all that, lack of chemistry and a new player coming in, you're not going to be, playing with your full set of team every single day. And I think that's going to be another factor why I don't think, the Nets are going to be able to go and win the whole championship this year. But I mean, with the talent,
do you think it would have
there.
been? Do you guys think it would have been different? Because you all 3 of you mentioned the fact of Steve Nash being a rookie head coach. Would it have been different, say, if it was a more experienced coach? If it was, say, a Phil Jackson or a Doc Rivers or a Greg Popovich, would you have more confidence in this situation if the coach was different, or is it kind of a hopeless situation because of those 3 players and kind of their attitudes and their mentalities?
Yeah, so I can take this. I think it'd be hard to say that an experienced coach like Popovich or Phil Jackson or Thibodeau
Hey, Tim.
wouldn't make a difference. But the
All
thing
right, we're
is
gonna mute Yusuf as well.
no. But seriously, you have to understand that these three have very strong personalities. And drama aside, it's about mentality. So I think the biggest question after this trade is, can the Brooklyn Nets work? And when you look at the top three players on that team, you have Kevin Durant, you have James Harden, and you have Kyrie Irving. Let's start with James Harden, right? Obaid quoted him. And that quote to me was very telling about James Harden and his mindset, right? It's always about his teammates. There's no self accountability. It's always, oh, we don't have enough talent. The other team is better. We just don't have chemistry. But what about me, right? So at some point, he has to accept some responsibility. It might not all be on him, right? But that's what a leader does. So there were times where LeBron James, he lost. He had a triple double, and he'd still say, "I got to be better. I got to be better." The amount of times I've heard James Harden say that, very minimal, if any, right? So that mentality right there is concerning, and the Brooklyn Nets should prepare themselves for that. Number two, Kevin Durant. I think mental toughness is also something that we really need to look at when it comes to championships. Kevin Durant does not strike me as a mentally tough guy. This guy on the Oklahoma City Thunder was up 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors, right? And they blew that 3-1 lead. He had enough talent at OKC, but at some point during that series, he realized he could not do it. He could not beat this team. So what did he do? He did what I personally think is probably the weakest move in NBA history, is join a 73-9 team and win 2 championships that way. To me, those championships don't mean much, honestly. He balled out for sure, but he had Clay, he had Steph, he had Draymond. He already had a championship level caliber team there. Third, you have Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, you know, thinks he should be the guy, right? And the proof of that is when he was on Cleveland. And he was annoyed by the amount of credit LeBron James was getting. And Kyrie Irving was like, no, I can do it on my own. And so what did he do? He dipped from Cleveland and then went to the Boston Celtics. And the Boston Celtics ended up playing better without Kyrie Irving, right? So there's so much talent there, but that mental toughness, that mental drive, and just the preparation that you need to win a championship, I do not think any of those three have it. The talent is there to win a championship, no doubt, and I don't think anybody is arguing that. But it's just their personalities that are going to be their hindrance. And unfortunately, Steve Nash is a first-year coach. I don't know how much of that he can change, especially because these guys really aren't young anymore. They're veteran guys in the league. So how much personality change can be made? Not much. And I think at the first sight of things going wrong, you're going to have, fireworks in that locker room. And it's just not going to be a great situation.
Who do you think is most willing or is willing to sacrifice for the betterment of that team? Because you have three alphas. You have Kevin Durant, who clearly is the most talented and the best player. And when he is on his game, which he seems like he is at this point in the season, the way he's been playing, him and LeBron are one and two in the NBA. Arguably with Giannis and Kawhi kind of breathing down their necks, but it's a toss up between LeBron and Durant in terms of best player in the world. And Harden's been the alpha. He's been dribble, 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 shoot. That's basically been him. And it's gotten him a lot of success. They've gone to the Western Conference Finals a couple of times. They've been in the playoffs virtually every year. And him and Durant have won 7 of the last 11 scoring titles. And that's nothing to scoff at. That's very impressive. But there is one basketball. So who do you think is going to have to sacrifice the most for this team to be, or who do you think has a capability to do that? Number one.
I think it's Kevin Durant, honestly, because he's done it before, right? He did it with the Warriors. And the track record of James Harden and Kyrie Irving, you really don't see that. You see very selfish players in a sense. James Harden, in order to be successful, needs the ball most of the time, right? That's why he liked Mike D'Antoni. So, to me, I think it's Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant at least has that understanding where he's like, you know what, I'm willing to sacrifice as long as these guys can help carry the load. So that's what I think.
And that's sad though, right? And
Go
I'm
ahead,
just
Dan.
gonna say that's sad because I mean Durant is the best player on the team, and he's the one that's willing to sacrifice, right? So it's sad and kind of speaks to the volumes of the other two guys.
Well, we're just speculating. You guys, like, that's the question. Is like, we think, but we don't know because, I don't assume, if I'm James Harden and I'm going to Brooklyn and I want to get traded to the Nets, I would assume he has the understanding that Harden is a better player than myself, and I might have to take a step back, right?
See, I think we do have enough evidence because, like Yusuf said, these aren't rookies or young guys. We've seen enough. Like they've all been in the league for close to a decade, if not, I think KD's been in the league a little bit longer. And since KD, joined the league, he's deferred to people on his team. He'd still go get you 30. But if he really wanted to, like if he wanted to get 40 points, I'm sure he could have gotten 40 points a game. If he wanted to demand the ball, things like that, I'm pretty sure he could have said, get the ball out of Westbrook's hands, give it to me in OKC and things like that. So we say KD has the most capacity to do it because he's done it his entire career. Like everyone talks about the move to the Warriors. He went to the Warriors, obviously sacrificed because he's playing around Steph and Clay and Draymond and that great organization, but he still got like 27 points a game when he was out there. So he was still getting his own, even though he wasn't getting the touches. I think everyone's on that team is going to sacrifice. KD is going to see the slightest, in my opinion, KD is going to see the slightest impact on his numbers just because he's so efficient. Like I was watching a game the other night, he was like 9 of 11, with 5 free throws or 6 free throws, and he had like 30 points, but it was extremely efficient. I think James Harden is going to be the next closest to his current averages. He's not going to be dropping 34, 36 points a game, but I think he'll be in the mid to upper 20s. I think the wild card here is Kyrie because out of all three, I think he is, he definitely has the best handles, but I think he's the least talented on the offensive side just because the other two are just so great. But I think mentally wise, he wants to be the number one. And I think that's going to cause a lot of issues when he's the third leading scorer on the team because KD, if you give him 15 touches in a game, he's going to get you 30. James Harden is going to, shoot volume shots. And so, Kyrie's going to take what's left.
What advice do you guys have for Steve Nash? What should he do? Or is he
brace himself?
Bro, lace him up. Be the facilitator.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
I mean, I feel like he should, talk to the three together to kind of let them know that, hey, we're here. The goal is to win a championship. We got to put our egos aside and, let's go out there and just make sure we get the W. And it's not all about stats. Let's work together and go from there. But he is a player, and Kyrie and Durant vouched for him and brought him on. So I'm hoping that they listen to him. But, then again, with the podcast with Durant and Kyrie saying like, oh, we're going to be our own coaches, like that itself shows that you don't really believe in a coach.
Right.
So I think he's going to be in it for a long haul. And I don't see, unless he's got to be strict, I think. Right. I don't know how Nash seems like a really nice guy. So with this, it's not going to work. You got to be a little strict. You got to put them in their place right from the beginning. And if he doesn't do that from the beginning, then it's just going to be chaos.
Also, I want to add, just like I was one of the ones who predicted that James Harden wouldn't be on the Houston Rockets by the end of the season, I think there's a strong chance that Kyrie might not even be on the Brooklyn Nets given his shenanigans. That's one of my predictions.
I don't think he's going to be in the NBA anymore at this point.
Yeah, no, honestly, because I don't know if you guys saw a recent headline and a report saying that the Brooklyn Nets might have enough to possibly terminate his contract given his situation. Yeah. Because he's missed games on personal issues, but he hasn't really mentioned what those personal issues are. He's violated COVID protocol, being at a family gathering without a mask, and I get it. Nobody takes away from the fact that he's, charitable and he's a philanthropist and everything like that. But man, when you sign a contract to play the game of basketball, you play the game of basketball. You can't be talking about social reform in one breath and justice in one breath, and then just gypping your employer who's paying you millions, and then you're not showing up for them, right? Because that's a contract. Yeah, it's hypocrisy. And so I think, what's unfortunate is Kyrie Irving has enough talent to be able to make legit change in the social dynamics as well as on the NBA court. LeBron James has the blueprint for that, where he shows up on the basketball court and then off the court, he does what he needs to do. Kyrie Irving needs to learn from that. I think he's just shooting himself in the foot, and then he's ultimately alienating himself, because of his antics. You can't talk about one thing and then do the other.
Before we kind of conclude the podcast for today, the full details of the trade we'll kind of break down real quickly. Was obviously the biggest one, Harden to the Nets, along with some cash to fill out for their roster. Karis LeVert to the Rockets, who was then sent to Indiana. And then Victor Oladipo was sent to Houston. Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince from the Nets to the Cavs. And the Rockets get back Dante Exum, the guard from Cleveland. And I'm not going to pronounce it right, but Rodinas Cruces from Brooklyn. Houston also gets 3 unprotected first-round picks, 1 from Cleveland as well, and 3 swap picks as well. So Houston got a pretty big haul. They're trying to pull their best Oklahoma City impersonation. And I think it'll be good for their future. But obviously, this is a superstar league run. Superstars win championships, and the Nets got a superstar, and that's what they wanted. And let's see how this season goes. And do you think now with Harden on their roster, are they the favorites in the East?
We're all shaking our heads. No.
None of you expect. I say with Harden there, I think they are the unequivocal favorites in the East. This is a championship or bust year. I wouldn't say finals or bust year. They have to get to the finals, and I think they will get to the finals. Whether they win or not, I don't know.
I'm going to ask you one question, Obaid.
Yes.
Who do they have on their team right now that can man up with Giannis? Before they had Jared Allen, and DeAndre Jordan's getting older, but he could body him for 20 minutes a game.
I don't know, man.
You're going to tell me KD is going to lock down Giannis?
They're pretty lanky. They're pretty long, and they're pretty lanky. Both types.
He's going to get bullied in the post, man.
But do you think Giannis can keep up with KD's his perimeter game, his mid-range game? I mean, Giannis couldn't really get to the finals playing against teams that really couldn't guard him for the most part anyway, because all they did was they jammed the paint and he couldn't drive in. So that's kind of the formula to beat Giannis. And I never thought the Bucks were even favorites. We all thought the Heat were, and now, most of us thought that the Heat were.
I did not pick the Heat.
I did.
I said most.
I picked the Heat. I picked the Heat. I'm sticking with Jimmy Buckets.
Two out of 4 said it was the Heat, and so obviously now I think with Harden on this team, and I'm gonna say the Nets are the team to beat in the East. Whether that proves to be right or wrong remains to be seen. But I think just having Harden on this team is going to be incredible for the NBA. It's going to be awesome to see how this unfolds throughout the year, and it's going to be really cool. And also to see how Houston develops and how Indiana, what types, how they are affected by this trade, and whether it's good for their future or not. But I'm actually shout out to Victor Oladipo, super underrated. It's going to get its talent seen in Houston, and he's going to do great with John Wall, in my opinion.
Just real quick before we wrap up, I want to end with who do we think is coming out the East? Out of my head, I've already picked my pick, but straight off the bat, I think the Celtics can beat the Nets in a 7-game series. I think the Bucks can beat them in a 7-game series. I think the Nets would destroy the Heat in a 7-game series. So that's my analysis. Yusuf, what do you think? What do you think the Heat are going to do against the Nets right now? Because I really don't think the Heat can do anything.
I'll tell you. You're saying Milwaukee is going to destroy the Nets.
No, I said they could take them in a 7-game series.
Okay, they can take them in the 7-game series. All right. Who took them last year? Who eliminated them?
They got better players.
Bro, that's the thing. Look,
they
at
improved.
The end of the day, listen. Before we end, I just want to say, JJ Redick mentioned this in his podcast real quick. He said, when the Heat matched up with the Lakers had the top 2 best players at that time. But then he said the next best 5 were on the Miami Heat. Miami Heat have depth. They got Jimmy Butler, who has that mentality, dude. He's got the championship mentality. I think at the end of the day, 7-game series, put my money on Jimmy Buckets and the Miami Heat.
So
I love the loyalty.
I'm gonna stick with the. I agree with Obaid. I think the Nets should be the favorite. With the talent. I mean, I don't like them, but with the talent, I think they should. But I'm gonna stick with my Celtics. I mean, you're gonna need talent to beat talent, and the Celtics have the talent with three-headed monster themselves with Kemba, and what's it called, Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and they have depth as well. So it's gonna be fun. But I mean, I can definitely see the Nets being the favorite now. So let's see what happens.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I love all your thoughts. Love everybody's view on this, and hope to. We're going to see how this unfolds. And thanks again for watching the emergency press conference of this mega deal. And
Take care,
see you guys
guys.
soon. See you guys soon, and hope to catch you in the next one, guys.
See ya.
Bye, guys.